A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangu Shampagi. And tonight we'll be discussing the politics of alliance building, the collapse or alleged collapse of the Democratic Alliance, the outfit that was created to promote a single opposition candidate in the 2016 general elections, but also failed to have a kind of a joint working method with different players, especially in the opposition, to field joint candidates or single candidates in the various constituencies. To discuss that with us tonight, let me start with Honour Peter Komoloit, Corporate Affairs Director, Nile Breweries, SAB Miller, but he comes on the show largely on the wealth of experience he has as a journalist and as a former presidential press secretary. Honour, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles.
Medad Segona Lubega, you haven't been here, I think, on this show.
I think I was here once, and that's some time back.
You have actually been very silent even in Parliament itself. Is it the season or is it something else?
Well, I don't know how many times you read the answer. That will give you the answer.
Well, we knew about you before you started appearing in the answer.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, so
I am speaking, but you see the problem here is people don't understand that you must process what to say in order to remain credible and useful.
So the rate of processing has gone down?
The rate of processing continues, but of course engagement is also increasing.
Very nice to have you. Norbert Mao, or commonly known as Chairman Mao, President General of the Democratic Party. Very nice to have you.
Some may say the disputed President of the Democratic Party.
Who is not disputed. Even God is disputed by Satan.
I know.
Thank you, Charles. I thought this show was for journalists only. I don't know what we have done to be subjected to it.
You have had very long association and close association with journalists. You used to author a letter from Gulu, and people sometimes judge journalists by people who appear in the media.
I no longer have a good editor. You know, to be a good writer, you also need a good editor. I actually don't do the finished product myself. I'm more of a talker than a writer. So I write, and then the editor trims it and tightens it.
I'm happy when someone makes that acknowledgement, because sometimes the editors and unsung heroes, we only look at them for the mistakes that get published.
And of course, Chairman Mao, I think, really needs to remain a writer because he's the master of the soundbite. I mean, if you are looking for the nice lines, you have to get it from the chairman.
If you're a talker, you may not write those sound bites. That will be different. Let me start with you. You've been fielding press conferences over the last few days as a member of the summit of the Democratic Alliance. Can you tell our viewers what exactly led to the collapse of your efforts at building consensus and coming out with an announcement of a joint candidate, single candidate?
The last 2 weeks saw TDA under a lot of pressure to deliver the joint presidential candidate. Little did we know that people were simply digging in. Even though all the candidates signed the declaration saying they can support whoever would be selected, turns out that the allegiance of the candidates to their political bases was stronger than their allegiance to the mission of TDA. So, in order to facilitate some measure of consensus, we decided to go on a retreat. And for almost 4 days, we had the retreat. The retreat brought together members of the summit. The summit consists of the 9 entities, 7 political parties and 2 pressure groups that are signatories to the protocol of TDA. It also has youth representatives as a special category. It also has eminent persons like Bishop MacLeod Ochola, Father Gaetano Batanyenda, people like Imam Kasozi and Owechitibwa Mulwanya Mulise Mogerere. The purpose of that retreat was to examine the criteria on which we can base our choice of a joint presidential candidate. We looked at many things. They asked us about criminal records. They asked us about whether we have been subject of any investigation related to corruption. And everybody declared whether the allegations were true or false. You had to state it, that I've ever been charged with this. Those who were involved in inquiries also had to state your capacity to raise funds based on concrete record, your capacity to be a team player and not be a one-man show. So there was a general discussion. We then agreed on procedure. First, that the candidates would address us. In fact, we first wanted a TV debate like the one you did for FTC. Unfortunately, it made some people uncomfortable. For me, I was very happy with it, because at least it would give me a chance to display some of the strengths that I believe I have. Unfortunately, there was no time for it because we were too busy arguing in the summit. Then we said the candidates should address the summit, and that was put on the agenda. But later the summit said the candidates should sit alone. You never know, they may agree. So we were kicked out of the summit meeting, the four of us, and we met first time for 8 hours with a lunch break. I think that meeting helped to ease the tension, interpersonal tension. We got to know a lot about each other. What were our aspirations when we were young? How did we grow up? And how do we think about issues? What do we care about most in our public life? It was really an icebreaker. We went for lunch. In the afternoon, we continued. And each of us spoke at length, almost like average of 1.5 hours. I think it was very good. So we did not conclude. But at that time, Professor Bukenya and I whispered to one another and we said, look, if really we believe we are going to get one presidential candidate, I think in a situation where we see two clear front runners, namely Amama Mbabazi and Besigye, maybe we should give way. So we agreed on that, and our position was clear that we would support Amama Mbabazi. We didn't make it public because we
How did you arrive at that? Because you called a press conference and issued a statement declaring Amama Mbabazi the candidate of TDA.
That came after prolonged debate in TDA, and where finally we arrived at the crunch time where each member of the summit had to declare where they stand between the two remaining candidates. And the majority, apart from FDC and CP, were really for the Honorable Amama Mbabazi. And at that point, the way we have been practicing consensus, the chair would have said there is this preponderance of opinion which I sense, and I want to now put it to the summit. Can I pronounce that we have a consensus and that Amama Mbabazi is the candidate? Obviously, there were very strong objections.
You are the only person who have had opportunity to speak to who was inside that conclave. The rest of the world for 2 weeks, the rest of the country for 2 weeks, was waiting to see whether any smoke will come out and whether that smoke will be yellow, orange, or if it would be blue. And it didn't come out like that. You have a number that can be counted almost off 2 sets of hands of members of the summit. When you say a majority, what exactly do you mean? What is the constitution of that majority?
To my recollection, the majority I'm speaking about is virtually every member of the summit minus FDC and the Honorable John Ken Luchamuzi, because virtually all members of his National Executive Committee have come to the side of the Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi. And that was visible. And the way we have been practicing consensus, namely to put the issue and then ask those who are objecting whether, notwithstanding their reservations, they can live with what has been agreed by an overwhelming
just one last
number.
question before I move to the other gentleman on the set tonight. Do you think that, why do you think that Ugandans will believe your position and not think that you and Amama Mbabazi have cut a deal? Because Amama Mbabazi indicated, at least my colleague here, Shilan Huchire, tweeted and said he had commented to the journalist and said, over the last 1 year, I have held 22 meetings with Dr. Kizza Besigye. We've been meeting over the last 1 year. In fact, we have held 22 meetings, meaning that he has been trying to convince him. Isn't there a possibility that you're saying what you're saying because you and Amama Mbabazi cut a deal somewhere?
I'm the only one among the 4 candidates who has never had a one-to-one meeting with Honorable Amama Mbabazi. I prefer to work through the institution of the party I lead. In any case, I'm not even dying to be a member of the government when we win. I don't have to. I can be like Sonia Gandhi. I will name the Honorable Segonas to go and run the government. I'll stay home.
You want to work in the kitchen cabinet?
I think I have a lot more to offer by supporting people in government, while I also prepare my political future. Okay. So I don't want to be tied up by government. But the truth is, TDA has a protocol, and the protocol is the deal. Now, when you talk the way you have talked, you suggest that there's some private deal. There's no private deal.
Well, political brinksmanship and the political deal making works exactly like that. Or in the conference room, you have positions. Outside the conference room, they say deals are cracked.
I think we are going to have bilaterals, because politics is a game which is usually in flux. They actually will meet the candidate and say, by the way, this bloc will support you if these issues. And the Baganda will do the same, religious groups will do the same. I think it is legitimate.
Let's bring this gentleman into the discussion. Honor, what, to many people, TDA as an idea might still live, but as a group, as an organization, has collapsed. What does this say about the politics of consensus building in this country? And did you see TDA ending up the way it ended up, that initiative?
Yeah, I saw it ending up the way it did, because, look, for me the biggest challenge TDA faces is a classic case of 100 rats without a lion. And almost in all politics that have that kind of scenario, there will always be no consensus to speak of. I know in true democracy you need people to discuss and agree, but even in true democracies there is still always a majority element in it, you know. All coalitions must have some majority element. Someone in that group needed to have been seen as having some majority for one reason or the other, either financially, either in terms of following, in terms of something that people would need to rally around, you know. They would negotiate with that person, but at the back of their minds they would know that this person has something they are holding which we can't do without. So the moment you had this alliance of equals in politics, it rarely works, you know, because Besigye and Amama, who are the primary contenders, saw them as equals. I think especially when Mbabazi went to the east, the dynamics changed. I believe when Besigye earlier was saying we welcome the Honorable Mbabazi with whatever he brings to the table, he thought he did not really have anything that could amount to popular support. But the moment these crowds, however deceptive they may be, were seen to be on the side of Mbabazi, just as Besigye had his own crowds. The dynamics changed. So there was no way this alliance was going to work. And even look, for people like Chairman Mao, their biggest problem also is that they are really Kampala-based figures. I spent 10 years in Igulu. I know it was in Igulu, yes. But they cannot really actually call on the countrywide following that they would bring to the table. They may control their political institutions in the city, but that's where people think their power ends. So because they have not amassed popular support in the countryside, there is always that doubt that they are contenders who can really be, who cannot be challenged. So you had everyone thinking, well, I'm like you, so who are you? Okay. So nobody was willing to blink.
Honorable Segona, the politics of alliances, especially for the opposition, start 1996. Dr. Paul Kawanga Semogera and the attempt at creating the IPFC. 2001 informally rallied around the reform agenda. Yes, DP had a candidate in, Francis Bwenje contested as a DP candidate then, or as a member of DP, but the majority consensus tended to rally around Dr. Kizza Besigye in that race. 2006 might be a little different because you had opening up of political space, but there was also an attempt at having a joint candidate. 2011, the IPC collapsed even before it started. 2016, it collapsed again. Do you think really that the opposition can run? Did you see the TDA ending up the way it has ended up? And what does this mean for chances that a candidate outside of the NRM, outside of President Museveni, can actually be holding, be receiving the instruments of power in May next year?
Well, actually, that's a big question, especially where I think Mr. Museveni has been winning as a result of people thinking he cannot be defeated. And so I think it's, in English it's called invincibility. But we want to demonstrate, at least this time round, that we can defeat Mr. Museveni and we send him home. The politics of alliance, yes, has had its history. The history has not been the best. But I think even an attempt that we can work under an alliance, to me, is good enough. It's a starting point that we need to embrace the culture of working together, especially where we're having a common problem. And that common problem today, as we speak, I think, is Mr. Museveni and Musevenism as a concept. So if you have minds coming together to say, we can work together for that common purpose, whatever distinct ways of doing things, whatever distinctiveness in identity, to me, that's welcome. As to why this one seemingly collapsed as you think, which I don't think.
So you can share with our viewers and tell us the thing is still holding together, because if you look at the reports in the newspapers, they say the thing collapsed.
I think Onapitro Komolo has brought up out that well, that even in an alliance, there must be an element of majority. And from what Chairman Mao, my president, has said, you would see that there was a majority thinking alike, and a minority that you cannot, that you can respect for their minority opinion. The point Onapito made, that Dr. Besigye received Honorable Mama Mbabazi and said, well, he's welcome, to me is the starting point. What we have mixed up is the thinking that Honorable Mama Mbabazi is a stranger to the opposition. To me, he's not a stranger. He has come, he has joined. He has been sitting at the topmost organ of TDA with our party presidents, summit where I don't sit. So that, to me, means that he's one of them.
We can come and interrogate that after a short break. The question I'm asking is it your assertion that TDA is still holding together and will deliver?
Together and will deliver a different question from the existence of TDA. There is TDA. I think they are still working together. You look at the protocol, there are a number of objectives, and they have not resolved on the rest apart from a joint presidential candidate, where I still think there is a possibility, because these are people who have worked together for a long time. They can still sit down and talk in the best interests of our country, and that would be my encouragement to them. For as long as you can work together, please sit down and talk. If you are not in a position to work together, agree on how you're going to work in separation, but I think it is still possible.
Okay, let's pick this up after a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this edition of the Fourth Estate, and we are interrogating what next after the Democratic Alliance failed to announce a joint candidate for the 2016 elections. And people are watching and focusing on the TDA now on the failure of only one position, which is the joint presidential flag bearer. It's supposed to agree on so many other positions down the line up to LC1 level, if at all. And people are saying, if you fail on this position that has the least competition, what will you do when you have DP, FDC, UPC, JEMA, Federal Alliance, PPP, all those that are signed up? PPP is not signed up with the TDA protocol, but all wanting to have their own candidate. I want to come back to you briefly, Medad Segona. You're saying as an idea it's a good idea, but sure, all the reporting over the last about 2-3 weeks on TDA shows that as an idea it's not working. And you're saying the joint problem that the country faces, in your words, is President Yoweri Museveni. But if you analyze the politics within, or what the goings on within TDA, the argument is actually that the problem now is Dr. Kizza Besigye failing to agree with Amama Mbabazi, whom, as both of you say, seems to have the majority of the thinking within the TDA.
You see, like I said, it's important first to diagnose the problem. If you have identified the problem and your disagreement is over the medicine to administer, then you're somewhere. And my conviction is that you can still sit down and agree on how you're going to treat the patient. And the best way of treating Uganda as a patient is sitting down and agreeing. But even where you don't agree, you agree on the mode of separation and how you're going to relate in your disagreement. I mean, to me, especially we lawyers, agree to disagree. And all you need to do is, if you have disagreed, then agree to disagree. And you know how you're going to keep shooting at your target, which is the common enemy. But like I said, you have disagreed on just that's one position, where I even insist there is a possibility of agreeing, and talks should continue, whether formal or informal. But then you also have this 90% you're talking about, because the problems do not start and stop at the presidency. You can still go down and talk about the others. And let me also tell you, let nobody deceive you that there is no possibility of defeating Museveni, Mr. Museveni, even if we are not working together the way we are. Because this is not the first time.
You've said the same over the last 4 elections.
True.
Yes. In 1996, the Democratic Party fronted Dr. Paul Mogere,
yes, and
created an alliance, IPFC, and said President Museveni could be defeated. 2001, under the reform agenda, said President Museveni could be defeated. 2006, the same. 2011, the same. Now, 2016, what's different?
So do you want me to say he can be beaten and therefore abandon the use of the word defeated? No. I believe very strongly that we have been enhancing capacity. Since 96, as you're saying, I was a young boy in high school. 2001, I was a young university student. 2016, you're talking about a member of parliament. So what we've been doing over a period of time is to enhance capacity and to redesign our strategies. So that is what we're doing. Some of the strategies may not work, but I believe that we still have enough strategies.
What strategy do you have?
But the moment I start telling you the strategy we are adopting, it will cease to be a strategy.
Not really.
One of the strategies which leaked of necessity was that we were fielding a joint candidate. The other strategies are still in place. Yes. And I would not tell you.
Strategy failed.
I want to believe that I'm a stakeholder, and our viewers are stakeholders in this strategy that you're talking about.
Yeah, yes.
And one of the most missing things on Apito is that Ugandans are waiting to be convinced that there is someone or a group of people out there who have a clear plan that can actually overwhelm President Yoweri Museveni and the National Resistance Movement in spite of all the challenges, including vote rigging, as people talk about it. And that has been elusive from a lot of, absent from a lot of the opposition.
In terms of a psychological aspect of challenging President Museveni, of course this would have worked for maybe Mama Mbabazi if he was seen as marshalling the opposition, but now it has sort of given the president one nail, so he has to reorganize his attack if he has any attack plans. But look, for me, at the same time, the opposition is really beating itself over nothing. This country, the so-called individual merit, actually gotten so entrenched in the psyche of the Ugandan voter that regardless of how many candidates you have on the ballot, they will always be able to gravitate towards one, at most two people. So the whole idea of having wanted a joint candidate was just for maybe psychological factor, that it gives the voters a feeling that the opposition is more united. So, but in reality, it's not going. It would not change the picture. I'm very sure between Mama Mbabazi and Besigye, contrary to the feeling that they have different constituencies, they don't. And I think the opposition's chances will not be down to the brilliance of an individual or of their own organization. It will only be down to what I've called a moment of history. If that moment is coming in February, it will come. But if it has not come, as most people think it has not come, single candidates, multiple candidates, Yoweri Museveni would still be around.
Chairman Mao, that's a very pessimistic view of your initiatives and efforts, either under TDA or as opposition players. That Onapita is just
no, not pessimistic, just realistic view.
I don't mind pessimism. All through my life, I've been a morale booster for causes that people never believed in. Our people thought the war would not end in the north. They thought they would die in the camps. And when we used to say one day the battlefields will become green again as farmlands, people thought it was a joke. The question is, in order for a leader to inspire people to believe, he or she must also be a very strong believer. In the meeting of our quartet, what you call the conclave, we put to the Honorable Mama Mbabazi, and we told him the reforms we are talking about is not just primarily those of changing laws and saying, okay, you want an independent electoral commission, amendment. There shall be an electoral commission to be known as the Independent Electoral Commission. I mean, it's like putting lipstick on an accident victim. Cosmetic, purely. We want the conduct of the police is even contrary to what is in the law. As political parties, we are not supposed to be regulated by Kale Kaihura. Our regulator is the Electoral Commission. Just like Bank of Uganda is the regulator of banks. But in a situation where now RDCs are telling banks, change the interest rate, and so on. So, we asked the Honorable Mama Mbabazi that. To quote him, he said, there is nothing Museveni can throw at us that we cannot counter. The reason why people are excited is basically they believe that he has walked away with the engine of the bus. So the bus will now become a chicken house, basically.
And what is that engine? The image of an engine of the bus is a very strong one. What is that engine?
The NRM is a state party. State operatives and officials do the work of NRM. And the Honorable Mama Mbabazi, both by reputation and by his own confession, built that network, or to a large extent built that network. Do you know why they have stopped the primaries of NRM? Because they believe that they are sleeper cells and now that they have made it easy to cross the floor when you come to Parliament, it is going to be now an own goal. And you must know that an own goal is also counted. So,
but Honorable Mao, if we could interrogate that a little more, one of the questions that Ken Luchamzi raised to Mama Mbabazi was said he doesn't have a clear structure. And people have been asking and saying, yes, Mama Mbabazi has crossed over to the opposition. One, he has not denounced his allegiance to the NRM. Number two, apart from a few people, as people say, I don't want to repeat that here, but as people have said, apart from a few close members of his family, he hasn't walked out of the NRM with anyone that you can say, this was so and so in the NRM, now he's standing in the column of Mama Mbabazi, and he's putting them to the service of the TDA or the opposition effort to challenge President Museveni. Isn't that a valid argument?
It's very risky to part ways with Museveni. Actually, for those of us who have always been opposition, it's easy. In fact, they find it easier to deal with us because they know where we stand. But do you know the amount of courage it took Kano Besigye to finally break out? The amount of courage it must have taken the Honorable Mama Mbabazi to finally break out. So, he may have sympathizers who are crowded on the fence. The campaign will shake that fence, and then you will decide where to go. You remember when Professor Bukenya came out, first he said, my problem was Mama Mbabazi. Now that he has been sacked as Prime Minister, I now have no problem
with Museveni.
At that time we were in Luwero campaigning. He saw the heat on the campaign trail. We saw him coming to the podium. Because in politics, if you read the signs correctly, you know what is happening. So I believe that we can trust. In any case, this struggle should embrace somebody who can come with some novelty. And I think it is wrong for us, because most of the people, Bidandi Sali also came. I don't know how many followed him. Kano Besigye also came in 2001. And Mzee Boniface Benyima summoned us to Ruti in Mbarara because some of us were not happy with the decision to support Kano Besigye. And he told us, my children, this man represents a new force. And it discredits the regime. His mere departure actually delegitimizes the regime. And he's now on our side. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? And we said it is a good thing. That same question should be asked of the Honorable Mama Mbabazi. Is his breaking out a good thing or a bad thing?
Okay. I hear you on that. And the question that I would like to put to both of you, you and Segona here, is if that is what you describe of Kizza Besigye, why have you had difficulty deciding between the two of them on who can actually lead the opposition to success?
We haven't had difficulty because we have been alive in Uganda and active. Now, if you are a coach and you have a critical penalty kick and you have a choice between one who has missed 3 penalty kicks and one who you believe can score but has never attempted
a penalty kick,
I think you are better off going with the one who you believe may bring a new approach to taking the kick. The Ugandans got a new hope when Kano Besigye emerged. But politics is dynamic. It is strange that leaders talk as if votes are just tied up in a sack and you keep them under your bed and you open the sack at election time. It doesn't work that way. So, we believe that we needed someone who will no longer spend time defending the extent to which whether he can win or not. Because if you go around telling people this election is already lost, it is going to be rigged, there is going to be violence, I don't know whether we shall win or not. But for the first time I think Museveni sees a real risk of losing. And that's a good thing in building democracy. Why do you think Museveni's people have suddenly fallen in love with Kano Besigye? Now, the spokesperson for Kano Besigye is Ofono Pondo. Another one is Kasule Lumumba, Richard Toduong. It's scandalous.
Let me put the same question to Segona before you take a break.
Yes.
Segona, why do you think that, I mean, people have been asking, Besigye has gone in and said, one, I have the biggest structure of an opposition party in this country called the Forum for Democratic Change. Of the members allying in TDA, he has said, I have consistently, over the last 3 elections, collected more than 2 million votes, and that I bring into this election. And they're rallying around Amama Mbabazi now. Where does that come from?
Well, first and foremost, the 2 million votes include my vote, which is not available anymore. So let nobody deceive you.
So you're declaring that you have...
I have a candidate.
And
I have a candidate, John Patrick Amama Mbabazi. So if you're talking about 2 million votes, they are not constant. At one time there were 3 million votes. So they have reduced over time. They can go up, they can go down. You see,
like
those are not personal property. And like I said before, Dr. Besigye is a good player. But you now have 2 strikers. You must choose. And we have chosen one. So where you see my...
Have you chosen actually?
Yes, we have chosen.
Who is we when you say we have chosen?
We as the team that has been allying and continues to ally.
We haven't seen an official
where you
announcement
see,
from TDA.
Just a minute. Where you see, I think Chairman Mao has already told you, the majority sat and said, look, this is the way we are going. But I've told you, even the minority must be accommodated and must be called back on board. So, the 2 million votes are not constant, so I don't think that is property somebody is coming with. These structures, I think we have 2 candidates, both of whom have been telling us, we have structures. You know, where Dr. Besigye has failed, he has not failed as an individual. We have failed together. And we must go into a search for new alternatives that we think can push us from where we are to some other level. He has achieved, and we have achieved together. I believe we should continue achieving together as we move forward. So if we have somebody new who is saying, I also have structures. You see, these are structures that you're not going to bring in Nambole and you start parading. They are in the villages.
Okay.
They are working. I have, for example, been analyzing our scores. In a number of polling stations, we've not been having agents. Somebody says I have structures up to the village level. So when you tell me you have structures as FDC, as DP individually, there is a problem. Bring those structures, now that we are working as a team, bring those structures and lend them over to the alliance where you are, if we are working for the country. So, my conviction was and remains, if we succeed in talking again, the FDC structures, the DP structures, the UPC structures, the CP structures, whatever their number, whatever their strength, bring them so that we can use them to face our common problem.
Okay, I'm afraid we need to take a break.
Okay.
Eona, I'll pick it up with you, and I'll give you time to complete your thought. Let's take a break and come back to this discussion in a moment. Welcome back to this last segment of the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing the TDA, what next, after over 2 weeks failed to pronounce itself on a joint candidate, though from what we're hearing now from an insider, a member of the summit, Chairman Mao, telling us the majority of the summit members were rallied behind John Patrick Amama Mbabazi, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda and former Secretary General of the National Resistance Movement, who is the latest to break away from President Yoweri Museveni and the NRM. Ona, let me come to you. In my own reading of the recent developments over the last almost 2 years now, since February 2014, President Yoweri Museveni and the NRM worked on a strategy to push Amama Mbabazi as hard as possible and as fast as possible from the NRM into the opposition. By agreeing to sign up the protocol of the TDA, and where the majority of the members are opposition members, he seemed to have completed that transition. Can he still attract people from the NRM, either to the opposition or to himself as a candidate? And where is the balance between him running as an independent candidate and running as a joint candidate of the TDA?
Look, first of all, I will go back a little to one of the challenges for the opposition was those people who have been with Besigye and then those who have coalesced around Mbabazi was again the question of closeness to the potential winner. That also matters. So that was one of the factors. But now to your question, is Mbabazi by endorsing the opposition alliance just playing into the hands of the NRM? Yes and no. Yes, because the sample in NRM may actually see that, look, this guy has gone with the people whom we didn't trust. But I think the smart money amongst the people in opposition and maybe the silent fear within the NRM is that Mbabazi represents an insurrection within NRM which is really boiling below the surface. And you know, because President Museveni is so strong, it's unlikely that a lot of people will challenge him openly. And all strong leaders of his kind have always been or have lost power, not in a prolonged open contest with their opponents. It's always a sudden uprising. So I think people like Chairman Mao and Honorable Segon, I think, are counting. They actually realize that President Museveni is so strong that they almost have to pray that there is going to be some surprise from within the NRM ranks, that there are people who have traditionally supported or voted for the president, especially in Western Uganda, that Mbabazi represents a comfort zone for them, that there will be no major change at the table. You may remove the head of the table and then everyone remains at their place with their plate full. So I think that's what they are counting, that Mbabazi brings on the table. People on voting day itself, without having previously said that they are with him, silently in the quiet of the basin, ticking his name, and then somehow something like that will deliver victory. So it's really a speculative effort in supporting.
Would you say?
Yeah.
Let me just put another question to you before I come to Segona. What will the cost to the TDA be and to Amama's candidature if the FDC and Kizza Besigye go ahead as they picked forms from the Electoral Commission? Already we have seen they have picked forms from the Electoral Commission indicating that they might break away and have their own candidate.
Look, I think if what we are hearing so far continues, sort of a fight between the two escalates and dominates the campaign trail, then it will definitely cost both of them. But if they concentrated on what they say is their main target, which is removing President Museveni, I believe the voters are only going to go for one of them. So it's going to be a two-horse race.
Is there likely to be a cost to the TDA and the joint opposition efforts if, for example, Amama is declared the TDA candidate, but FDC and Kizza Besigye decide to run?
Yes, I believe yes, because the whole purpose of working together was to combine efforts. And the effort of the FDC as a political party cannot be underestimated, especially having been a leading party. And that's why, for me, my view is that our efforts should continue to persuade our brothers to come back and embrace the spirit of working together, which has served this country. By the way, it has served this country even when we have not taken power, because we've been moving steps forward. But that notwithstanding, we will continue working as we engage them. So there is a cost that can be paid, because we would have combined the efforts, the resources, both human and otherwise. We will continue to work towards that. But that will not deter us from pursuing our main target. I agree with Onapito that our effort should be geared towards hitting our target, our common target, and that is targeting or looking at the presidency, other than fighting amongst ourselves simply because we have disagreed on the strategy of going forward. Now, there are some questions that have been posed and they make me laugh. Babazi has come with family, and you know, unlike so and so came with who, I don't know. But I must also tell you, if you're talking about a fundamental change, what is this fundamental change going to be if you're talking about bringing the same leaders who are doing this and that, who are not committed to the cause? For me, mine is actually commitment to the cause of liberating this country that matters.
And
there are those that
you think that by not denouncing the NRM or walking out of the NRM, Amama Mbabazi is showing commitment to that cause?
I think actually partly he has said it, and Pito said it when he said, there are those that most likely will be comfortable voting for Amama Mbabazi who they think is their own, and indeed it is true, it could be their own. But Mbabazi is ours too. If he's going to serve the interests that we are all pursuing, in NRM, what do people want? In NRM, people want change. There is research that has been conducted, and it shows that even within NRM, people want change. Change in what? Change in the terms of delivery of services, hospitals, schools, roads, etc., and the general way of looking at life. So there are many people in NRM that want change. So if Mbabazi represents that view, that we want change, why would I think about his color? I am DP. Somebody chose to be FDC, the other one chooses to be NRM. There are those common goals that we all pursue and we want. So there are many people that he could be coming with, or that will come with, or that he has come with, that are not necessarily those big names you are talking about. You see, some of the big names you wanted him to come with could be the ones I'm pursuing. So to me, my attitude about change is that bring whatever you have, then we combine efforts and we rid ourselves of
where do you draw your conviction that actually Amama Mbabazi has done a complete break from President Museveni?
Well, at least he has confessed with his lips. That's number one. It's a question of confessing with your lips and believing. So I live in a world of believing, and two, someone has confessed. Everyone has confessed. Why do you want to believe that I'm DP and not NRM at night? It is because I have spoken out with my lips. So I want to believe. Secondly, I'm also able to read between the lines. I read what is going on. I am following. Three, as parties, don't ever imagine that we simply sit at City House and then we wait for the day. We read newspapers and wait for the day to close. We also do research. It's about intelligence here and there. Intelligence is about having, keeping, and disseminating information. We get information. We know what is going on in their kitchen.
So you're convinced that he's...
I am deeply convinced, and I have no sense of shame in saying I believe. They have fallen out, and this is what I've been working for. I have caught my big fish, a Nile perch, and you tell me where is the Mukene? I get Ronaldo today, and you tell me place him on the bench. I would not be a coach.
Okay.
Now, before Chairman Mao comes, I want him to answer this question. I mean, Besigye sort of says the challenge has been protecting the votes. We have actually won. He quotes confessions by Sejusa and others. How is Zimbabwe going to protect the votes? Because, I mean, people believe the police easily stopped him when they felt he was breaking the law, and he became another ordinary opposition figure. So where is he going to derive the power to change anything? So seems
there are things I've seen him do in these few days that I have been at the heart of his campaign team. You know, his supporters are being targeted. The other day, a lady was arrested in Zombo. She's called Ajolo Road. I was impressed that a team of lawyers, among those he has retained, were able to go to Zombo immediately. despite the impunity, there are police officers who also don't want to become notorious. Because once you become notorious, you are notorious forever, whether the regime has changed or not. And many people like to play safe. Secondly, he has informed us of what he knows about how Museveni has captured the Electoral Commission and how he's trying his best to talk to those who are there, because they have captured the Secretariat of the Electoral Commission, district registrars who are now called district election administrators, and then of course returning officers and polling assistants. This election may not be actually won on what you say on the podium and how big your rallies are, but how you can actually monitor the movement of the votes, how they are counted, and to ensure that you have a strong presence at each polling station. He has assured us that he can do that. Secondly, technology is also there. It's possible to have technology to scan DRR forms immediately, send them to a central point, and because when the matter goes to court, they will all be checked, and it will definitely have the signature of the returning officer. So even if because in the opposition, because we don't have a lot of money, some of those who hold our DRR forms use them to bargain for payment. So if you don't pay them, they don't release the DRR form. But we hope we can solve that problem. Thirdly is the question of the security. Honorable Mama Mbabazi has been associated with power. I noticed the body language of the police officers who go to confront him. You know, even if the Pope were to commit a crime, for you to bundle him up in the back of a pickup is a bit problematic. This is a man who, for as long as I remember, has been wielding and projecting power. The power he hasn't wielded, he has at least projected. And I think that helps in self-restraint by those who are sent to go after him. Because
someone would again say that the arrest or his arrest by Andrew Felix Kawese in Njero was just a test, and that a subsequent arrest and another one would have demystified the projection of power. Actually, many people think that by arresting him, Andrew Felix Kawese, though he's no longer director of operations, he had demonstrated that you can demystify the power that Mama Mbabazi has always projected or appeared to wield.
Well, some of us are arrested by DPCs of small police stations. I also wish an assistant inspector general of police would be the one to come and arrest me, because that would mean that, you know, I count for something in the system. Anyway,
but just back on that point, but if you now start thinking those are strengths he brings to the ballot and ultimately in your thinking to power or to the office, aren't you again going for another big man syndrome? We are talking of a president where someone could effect a citizen's arrest, but already you are saying this guy is so powerful and he wants again to bring to power that same big man. You know, this is not a citizen president, in other words.
I know human nature, and I'm not going to change it in the next 6 months. The truth of the matter is, Kano Besigye was appealing because everybody, particularly in the north, people said, aha, now a man who has fought, who knows the gun, is taking on another gunman. We are now relaxed. The man is going. That perception was important. So the same perception is also important. That's why veterans in America always win elections. Eisenhower came and said, people said, this is the man who beat Hitler. He launched D-Day. He liberated Europe and saved us after Pearl Harbor. Whether it is true or false.
So you must, go on the campaign trail with guys in dark shades and flanking you.
But I think I'm told that we need to get out of here. Time is out. But Chairman Mao, Just as we end and I run around the table.
I wanted to give a way forward.
Yes.
Because your question is, what next? First and foremost, we are really interested in having a ceasefire because the exchanges in the media, even social media, of course, the NRMs are now posing as Besigye's supporters and attacking people like me to stir the waters even further. I think we should recognize that and have a ceasefire. Secondly,
no, the question for our viewers and ourselves here, Chairman Mao, you are inside on the other side. Will you have a ceasefire? Will you have a resolution of this issue?
I yesterday declared a ceasefire on Capital Gang unilaterally. Secondly, our chairman, Professor Frederick Sempebwa, has summoned us for a summit meeting on Tuesday. Because, as the Honorable Segona told you, institutionally, the TDA may be staggering, but it is not dead. And you may stagger for many reasons.
But in the political context, maybe I need to put that Segona because we need to get out of here. The studio is telling us we need to get out of here, production studio. So maybe your last word, and I'll put to Meded Segona. The staggering, how is it playing into the hands of your major opponent, who seems to be very organized and moving on with their own plan?
So certainly our opponent is not as organized as you're portraying him. You can see the troubles there. I mean, the gunshots, which are the crossfire, which is all over. But that is not a license for us to keep staggering. So staggering has a cost. The staggering must stop, and I would urge all players on my side and the other side to stop the staggering so that we can concentrate on hitting the target. So my view, as Chairman Mao said, if there have been any exchanges, people need to cease fire so that we go forward. One way of doing this is, as he said, the meeting on Tuesday should address that, how to disengage if they choose to disengage. And secondly, I want to state that this time round, we are prepared, more prepared than ever before, to show a presence at each polling station. Because you see, while Mr. Museveni has been rigging the vote, in some places he has been doing it openly. In other places he has been doing it discreetly because we have not shown our presence. Now the combination of efforts, precisely, the combination of efforts this time round is to have our presence at every polling station.
Okay.
We minimize, and that's how we intend to overwhelm Mr. Museveni, who has been winning with a minority vote, but because of those weaknesses, of course coupled with his own rigging, he has been portraying himself as a very powerful judge.
Has the opposition dealt with those weaknesses that Segona is talking about?
Look, it's unlikely that the opposition really will deal with many of these weaknesses. If at all they say that the NRM has been using the state machinery, it will still have the capacity to use that state machinery. But more importantly, you need to fight the perception that you are fighting for power for its sake.
Thank you. And you have the last word, which is the question of, with hindsight, do you think it was a wise idea that Amama brought all his strength into TDA instead of running as an independent candidate and then maybe Besigye yourself or someone else running as the TDA candidate, so that you combine those efforts once you have crossed a certain point?
TDA was formed to consolidate the energies of the democratic forces in Uganda, which are definitely fragmented, and to ensure electoral victory. Amama Mbabazi's focus on winning the election more than anything else was actually the one thing which swung us to his side. Many people thought actually I would have been the best compromise candidate. But you know the nature of our
you couldn't win. So
no,
compromise candidate did not win.
Many people who thought you'd have been the best candidate, or is it you who thought you'd have been the best candidate?
No, actually many people. What would Museveni has nothing to say about me. He has never appointed me to many posts. Unlike my colleagues, you could say all of them got their
But Chairman Mao, you were a candidate not very long ago.
No, I wasn't appointed a candidate by Museveni.
No, I mean your performance in that election would also come as a strength on your side, wouldn't it?
But I was committed to supporting one candidate. It shows that I learned the lessons after 2011. People like Honorable Segona have never given up on harassing me about opposition unity. That's
True.
why he went to Subi.
Our time is out. Our time is out,
What
gentlemen.
Chairman Mao is saying that it takes NRM person to succeed NRM. That's what
Our time is out. We need to get out of here. Thank you very much, Honorable Norbert Mao, for making time for the show. Thank you very much, Medad Segon Alvega, Honorable, for making time for the show. Thank you very much, Honorable Peter Ekomre. Thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight. Do join us again next Sunday for yet another exciting discussion right here on the Fourth Estate. Have a good night.